With that, ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to the first panel discussion for today. This session will focus on building information modeling, BIM, in design, construction, and operations. BIM has far and reaching consequences on both building procurement and infrastructure. This recent emergence constitutes one of the most exciting developments in the field of the built environment. These advances have offered project teams multi-sensory collaborative tools and opportunities for new communication structures. So how can we implement BIM and virtual and design construction on the cloud? How does BIM benefit in terms of time and cost management? Does adopting BIM help overcome common process challenges when we talk about poor visibility, project overruns? And why is there an increasing demand for BIM and growing need for prefab structures? If these are your questions, this session fulfills the vital task of bringing together experts from the industry, practice, and academia to debate and develop innovative solutions and predict future needs. But before we commence this session, here is a video from our presenting partner, Bentley Systems. May we have the video, please?
Around the world, engineers and architects, constructors and owner-operators are using Bentley's software solutions to design, build and operate the infrastructure that sustains our economy and our environment. Together, we are advancing infrastructure.
It is the front of house for our Emirates. So we wanted to do something spectacular, something iconic, something everybody will remember.
We chose Bentley. There are not many competitors who could do a project on this scale.
We wanted to use technology, digital technology, to do it in the best possible way. For this, we use Bentley software.
We're very proud of the association with Bentley Sachs. It's allowed us to be a leader in the industry.
And more important is, the Bentley management has worked with us to help us feel that comfort to work with Bentley. And that is what is driving us.
Bentley, advancing infrastructure.
I would now like to welcome the session moderator and panelist with a brief introduction. Please welcome our session moderator, Mr. Yash Pratap Singh, Partner Major Projects Advisory, KPMG. Mr. Singh is a BIM and lean enthusiast and has provided advisory services for portfolio management, schedule management, project reviews, PMO, owners management consultant, time and cost optimization, SOPs, project management maturity audits, and lean construction, among others. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Singh. And introducing and welcoming our panelists who would be joining him for this discussion. Once again, we would have Mr. Amarnath CB, President, BIM Association of India and Head BIM Strategy, Larsen & Toubro Construction with us, followed by Ms. Sonali Dhopte, Director, Excelize, an architect and interior designer since 1993. She has worked with top architectural firms in the US and India. At Excelize, she oversees and guides the BIM technology team and manages project deliveries as per client requirements. Mr. Kalyan Ramanan Vaidyanathan, once again, Director of Business Development, Bentley System, joins us on this panel. Ms. Rohini Kulkarni, BIM Specialist and Leader, AECOM. She is an architect by education and a BIM virtual design and construction specialist by profession with over 12 years experience in the AEC industry. She is an expert in implementation and information management on various typology of projects across infrastructure, rail and building domains, using industry-leading BIM platforms such as Autodesk and Bentley. Mr. Tushar Vagal, CIO and Head Digital, L&T Realty. He has been associated with L&T Realty since 2013. His career is built on the 3 pillars of engineering, finance, and information technology. Thank you all for joining us today. I now request Mr. Yash Pratap Singh to take the discussion forward. We have 45 minutes for the discussion and we look forward to an engaging one. Over to you.
And good afternoon all. I hope I'm audible. If anyone can confirm.
Yes,
I'm connected from a hotspot. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much and for having me here. I think I was just listening to Kalyan and Dr. Earlier in the keynote session, and I think that has there cannot be a better context setting than that. I think Kalyan and Dr. Amarnath have touched the right chords as when it comes to BIM implementation, the technical aspects, and what is the potential that is there for the overall infrastructure spending which is planned in the country. And my perspective is that as far as the BIM penetration is concerned, vis-a-vis what the infra market has to offer, we are only scratching the surface right now. And this is despite the fact that BIM has been in India for more than a decade now. So clearly, this is a massive untapped market as far as the BIM-based digitalization is concerned. And if you look back and see the current pandemic, that has also heightened this need for digitalization using BIM and give us the opportunity to leapfrog as whether in the private sector or public sector to leverage this pandemic and exploit the full potential of BIM. So, if you look at the investments which are coming up in the country, overall, we need to be better geared to deliver using technologies like BIM. And this will be successful if we have the entire ecosystem, whether it's the government, the private sector organizations, the OEMs like we have Bentley here today, even the service providers, all of them need to come together to make this work, and because everyone has a critical role to play, and this ecosystem has to work together to make this happen on a much larger scale. So with that said, the panel over the next 40 odd minutes, this will cover various themes revolving around building information modeling. We will bring in different perspectives, whether it's regarding the sector penetration or increasing the awareness of building information modeling, the government push, the 4D, 5D BIM, and the future trends also. So let me just do less of a talking now. I'll just start inviting the panelists to talk about some of the various perspectives that we want to cover. I think first one is while the investment is so much happening more on the government side, we also need to see that how we need to make the mind shifts at the policy think tank level to start thinking of having like a national mandate or something to make sure this gets cascaded down to the government projects also. So for that, I wanted to first invite our panelist Sonali Dhopte to share her views, and then we will go down to the other panelists also. So Sonali, if you can share your views on how we can increase the thrust from the government and the PSU sector on the building information modeling, that will be helpful, and then we'll go down to the next panelist. Sonali.
Thank you, Yash, and good afternoon, everybody. What we see currently in terms of adoption of BIM in India is that it's happening in silos. So if we look at organizations such as the NHAI or any of the metro SPVs that are there, or the road development, so infra development SPVs, they have coming together at an organization level and trying to mandate BIM at whatever different implementation level it is. But that is not what is happening at a policy or is it at a government level. And I think if we look at the bigger picture of why we want to do BIM adoption or why we want to do digitization, it's not just for construction, but it's these assets which are our infrastructure assets which we want to maintain. And if we can digitize those now, 30 years down the road, when we have to still maintain them, we will have one single source of truth at that time. And for that, we need a uniform policy. What is being proposed by one organization is not the same that the other organization is proposing. And I think earlier Kalyan has also hit on this issue of interoperability and having those challenges eliminated. So if we can do all that through some public policy or mandate, I think we will have won half the battle of being future ready.
Sure. I think that's you've touched the right point, because you need to start looking at it from the life cycle view also, because you're building the asset not just for the sake of building it, but for operating it also, which is much bigger than the capex cycle. And BIM can add a lot of value. And since a lot of government assets are owned by the government agencies as well, so they will need to adopt that view as well. Let me invite Rohini also from Atkins for your views also on this, on this increasing the government penetration for BIM. Rohini?
Absolutely, yes. So, definitely, what sort of Sonali touched upon absolutely sort of resonates. Most importantly, the asset owners and the asset sort of maintaining group that comes together is where the initial sort of setup and initial sort of implementation has to be brought in. The trust should start from there in a way, and it sort of plugs into a whole holistic sort of engagement as well as holistic sort of that we'll have to provide at the government level as well as the policymakers. They need to understand why we have to move towards this area. So if I have to draw, let's say, an example from how UK digitization sort of perspective has landed on the asset owners like Nifacrail for rail or Highway Cement for roads, how they are sort of pushing the digitization of the assets, the entire life cycle sort of starting from the design stage to the construction stage to the operations and maintenance and including decommissioning. So all of these, how sort of they come together, is all based upon the policies as well as the vision of those policies. What's in it that the policymakers as well as the government management side of thing can capitalize from this is something that sort of sets the tone, to be honest. And of course, the education side of it, because it's a new world, it's a new digitized aspects that many of them may not be, the ROI may not be directly visible in the first 2 years, 3 years implementation of it, but which will sort of cover and even more, sort of grow as they pass through the cycles of 5 years, 10 years down the line. And ultimately, all of this it's the asset maintenance that most of the sort of asset owners look for, where majority of the financial decisions sort of pivot or tip. That's where the most beneficial sort of or the most benefits can be realized once these assets or the entire sort of digitization of them moves into that area.
Sure. Thanks, Rohini. I'll just bring in Kalyan also in this discussion, mainly from let's say if you look at it from the OEM perspective, what sort of push is required at the PSU or the government, because one is at the policy level that once the, let's say, ministry or the, let's say, at the think tank like Niti Aayog, they have set up a policy. But then after that, how should the public sector units like and the large ones where the investment is planned, like if you look at the NHAI or even the NTPC and the likes, how should they go about it? What sort of mandates that they can actually follow to make this happen? Kalyan?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. Yash, I guess the other point of view that I'd like to bring is when it comes to sort of the technology adoption for pushing BIM-related processes and things like that, it is still seen as a cost-based exercise and not as a value-driven exercise. And that is also because, like Amarnath said, we probably still don't have enough history to say that's one solid case study of here is how much I've saved, or here is how much I've realized as a result of this, right? And lack of that means there's a very heavy, very short-term need to push for ROI, which is probably not very realizable. And you know how it is. When the ecosystem adopts, technology costs will come down, adoption costs come down. Even creating capability in the market for people to sort of use and adopt these technologies, which is I know you're going to touch upon a little later. So create that ecosystem, like you said, government is the biggest employer. And if they create that, I think the biggest enabling we will get from the government is to create that wide sort of a pan-country infrastructure, both in terms of capabilities, and move people to think away from very short-term ROIs to a value-driven exercise. And that alone, we believe, will help. Then everything else will fall in place. As a technology, OEM vendors are more than happy to sort of create that interoperability. Those are sort of operational dynamics, right? What you need is that culture, that enabling ecosystem, and that need to sort of push away from a very short-term ROI to a more long-term. So the technology being thought of as a cost-based investment to a value-driven engagement kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think very rightly said, Kalyan. I think this has to be looked at as a value driver instead of a upfront cost from the organization point of view, even from the government point of view. If all the taxpayer money is actually being spent on this 111 lakh crore of investment which is coming up. And I think that mind shift has to happen at the government level to make this happen, that how we can get the maximum out of it using technologies like BIM. So let me also now, dissect this further. And since we are talking about increased penetration of BIM at the government or even at the overall countrywide level, including the private sector, if we look at the in India, over the last few years, the usage of BIM has been largely on the transportation sector and the urban development sector. While the investments are happening in the other sectors also. If anyone would be aware of the NIP, the almost 70% of the projects which are coming up in the country, they are actually in the sectors of energy. You have roads, you have railways, you have irrigation, rural infra. And all of this will consolidate to easily 70 lakh crore of projects. And Kalyan, what you mentioned about the cost cutting and the time cutting, if we are able to achieve this at this scale, then definitely there is significant value which remains untapped at the overall country level. So how do we move ahead from or expand the reach of BIM to make this happen in other sectors also? Whether it's energy, irrigation, roads and highways, there has to be a starting point on how to get this done. One is that, some private developers will have to take the risk and move ahead. But again, since the projects are being mandated mostly at the government level, there has to be starting point from there as well. So there, I would like to invite some views from Dr. Amarnath on that. How we should expand the penetration beyond the metro or urban transport sectors to have full potential in other sectors also. Dr. Amarnath?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. The most important thing is don't look BIM as a technology, it's about data. So you may be using multiple technologies, but the main challenge even today, there is no, if you look into the global market, there are client-side strategic experts who formulate the digital transformation for their clients itself, for them, and they monitor the progress of the BIM in their projects. And that itself is one of the key lacking thing. Like clients have to have that kind of strategic leadership team to mature their projects. Second, when we look into the service providers, it may be from the technologies to the BIM services, to the overall ecosystem, maybe contractors, design, everything. There is no proper connect within there, because if I want to use BIM in the life cycle, not even a single vendor has a complete solution to drive it. And we don't have every participant in the ecosystem to follow only one solution. So that's where the open BIM, closed BIM concept comes in. And it's very much important to make sure that, when we are speaking about integrated BIM, That's the way forward in the global sector. If we are speaking about integrated BIM across the life cycle, so the technology vendors, first of all, need to make sure that their technologies are interoperable among other vendor technologies. That's number one. Second thing, the most challenging thing here is, today I spoke about some slides about return on investment. So which PwC report says 3% of the total project cost savings. Well, before even realizing that 3%, if a client is asked to invest more than that, it becomes a critical. Technology pricing is not so cheaper. There are few which are cheaper, few are pretty expensive. There it's just become a challenge for a client to go with BIM implementation. One side is a technology pricing, and second one, you don't have a strategic or a roadmap in front of you. It may be for a project level or an organization level or a client level. Third is you don't have that kind of team capable to deliver those services across the life cycle. Maybe design capable team are plenty in the market, but construction, operation, overall project strategizing or organization level transformation, there are no much of skilled professionals over there. And even though there are people, they are not well paid in the market. They will run away to other countries. So many of the Indians who have this kind of BIM capabilities are not working for India or for Indian projects. Many of the BIM service companies in the India are not working for Indian projects. The major challenge is the cost. And the major challenge here is because when you don't see BIM as a value, then you're not speaking about anything on data or BIM, or you're not bringing into the overall picture. So anyone involved in service providing, including from the tech vendors to the service providers, please bring in the clear return on investment for the client. See, this is the investment you have to put in for a project, and this is the kind of returns you can see. Give it the practical examples. Then every client will be able to agree for it. And if we are not able to put that in place, I think even SMEs cannot reach that. SMEs, the main challenge here is, forget about the big scale projects. There are many SME projects. Many of the companies are not able to go with it. The main reason is the investment. Like, what is the way forward? How do I go with the digital transformation? What is the kind of investments? What should I do as an overall plan for a company? Here is the main challenge, rather than getting into one technology for service.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Amarnath, for the perspective. I think one of the key enabler which is coming across in all these discussion, including the keynote session also that you and Kalyan had covered, that the awareness of our BIM in the overall industry has to be at a completely different level. We need to raise the level of awareness across the stakeholders. And we need to actually make this understanding clear to the common man in the entire project value chain, whether they belong to the contractor organization or developer organization, a vendor organization, and this has to become a way of life. So my next question is actually coming in that area only, that how do we actually start democratize BIM in the construction industry? How do we actually make this business as usual for construction projects? Like today, if you see any project coming up or being set up by either private or the government players, you will need to have the project schedule in place, whether it's in MSP or Primavera or any other scheduling software. How do we make this a business as usual? That you will need to have a BIM also in place. So how do we democratize BIM to the common man to make this a way of life? So with that, I would like to invite some views from Mr. Tushar from L&T. So Tushar, if you're there, if you can please throw some light from your perspective.
Okay, so like in real estate, there are a few key words which we use. What is the cost? What's the quantity? What's the quality? How is the quality? What's the schedule? Okay. So these keywords keep dabbling everywhere. Okay. So when I say cost, I say WBS element. Okay, work breakdown structure. When I say quantity, I say BOQ. When I say quality, I say clash detection. When I say schedule, I say service masters and all such things. So these things keep coming up, and I think a BIM ecosystem can definitely solve these problems. Okay. We started a journey a few years back doing clash detection. Today, we are much ahead on that. And about making people learn. See, 25 years back, we started doing software development in India. Okay. We were not that experts, right? We were doing small things, getting small successes. The same has to happen to also the BIM environment. People are expecting a model where they can walk through everything and understand each material also and all such thing. So the expectation has to be set. Okay, so that's one thing. The second part is like in Mumbai, at least the MCGM is making a BIM DCR. So after 6 months or so, it will become mandatory to make a 3D BIM drawing, and all the measurements will happen by laser scanners, and approvals will be given by laser scanners. So the future is there. Okay, and within the next 1 year, we all have to be on BIM. There is no way out. You like it or not like it, you have to start your journey from tomorrow itself. The third thing is that, okay, we start the journey, but how do you collaborate? How do you collaborate? How do you find delta changes? So there are various tools for that. The thing is, the vendors have to educate how to use those tools. It is not that costly. I can do a BIM project with a 4D, 5D for less than 10 lakh rupees. Just 10 lakh rupees. It is possible. So that's my say.
Sure. Thank you, Tushar. I'll just bring in Sonali again in the conversation on the because Sonali, given your experience in this, having done this for multiple projects, I'm sure you would have also experienced different level of awareness, different organizations, and also given the fact that there is trust which is there from the private or the public sector. How do we make this a common language? How do we start making this a way of life for projects as we move along? So, Sonali, your views on this, please.
So what I have seen is that 10 years ago, nobody knew what BIM was. And today, people are probably telling me more than what I know about BIM. So the awareness is definitely increased. But I think there is a belief that this is like a magic wand and it's going to solve all problems. But it's not a one-way street. So I think what we need to do is we need to be educating anybody or whoever we are working with, that you need to have your goals very clearly identified, why you want to implement BIM, what benefit you want to get out of it. And it has to be a gradual process. It cannot be you get a 100% ROI on your first project. You're probably not going to get anything. So a realistic picture has to be painted. And I think we as service providers have been very carefully telling our client not to do this, take baby steps. And we've seen multiple projects being executed at organizations. And with every project, there's a different ROI, there's a better ROI that we get. So it has to be an approach, like Amarnath was saying, a strategy that you need to set up at an organization level, that this is what I want to achieve at the end of this period. And that way, we can definitely see the benefits of BIM. Again, from an OEM perspective, interoperability should be there, because you should not be forced or tied down to one product or one tool, because through the entire life cycle, you have to be using different tools. And I think if we can do a couple of these things, also we'll see a bigger adoption and bigger reach of the benefits that we want to get.
Sure. Thank you, Sonali. I think let me also now bring in another dimension to this, because since we cover the government, the public, the private sector, and looking at specific other sectors also, if we look at the usage of BIM currently, the majority of implementation is happening on the 3D side. And then after that, we have the 4D, and rarely we have the 5D. I know there are challenges around 4D and 5D to make this happen, but that's actually based on the fact that BIM 4D always comes after the schedule is developed. BIM 5D always comes after the budget is also developed. And that's why sometimes clients actually tend to see that as an outcome, and then they start doing a trade-off that, do I actually need the 4D because I already have the schedule, I'm actually, I'll be able to manage the project on my own. I don't need to visualize. So how do we actually make 4D BIM an enabler for project delivery so that the planners actually start planning in a 3D environment instead of, having the schedule first and then starting with the 4D on that. So with that, let me ask Kalyan on his views, please. From your perspective, how do we increase 4D penetration, and how do we make 4D a natural process of planning for the projects as we do in 3D, a natural process of designing in 3D? Kalyan?
So thanks, Yash, for that. So I think one thing I would say is we always assume we have to go from 3D to 4D to 5D, which means you're always assuming that I need to have the model in place first. Whereas we believe, at least there is no need to go that way. You can start with the 4D, 5D and bring in the 3D afterwards, right? So the point I'm making is ultimately you're looking to say you would like to visually monitor projects, but your core interests are in monitoring time and costs, right? And therefore, what I think you really need is you accept the fact that, I have a schedule, I have my BOQs, and that are going to be progressively elaborated. And as and when my models come on, I can integrate them and interconnect them and bring them in place. Of course, that is I think that transition will help people see the value out of the 4D, and then they might flip it around and say, now that I see the value, let me get the 4D done, sort of the models done up front. So I'm saying you set up a use case and let the value drive the engagement model, so to speak. Right? That's one. And I think the other aspect to that is, as I said earlier also, I think because we use the word BIM, and somehow the word BIM has mentally the association of BIM is with a 3D model. Although we try to say in as many fora as possible that BIM is a process and BIM is this and BIM is that, the mental, and you said it right? So it is about the data. Amarnath said it, it's about data, and we all say this, right? So that's one of the reasons I'm saying, and that I believe to, Yash, one of your earlier points, the other sectors that we're talking about, whether it is energy, roads, and all of these other places, you start with I mean, I have one engagement wherein we have a client who said that my only goal out of my digital effort is to make sure that the RFI that I raise has a 24-hour turnaround. It needs to be raised in the field today, and it needs to go and sit as an approved RFI with what I need to pay to my contractor within 24 hours. To him, that was value. And now, having done that, of course, some of the they develop their entire SOPs around it. They develop their integration strategy around it. They develop their schedules and BOQs around it. A year later, now we're talking about how to visualize this on a map, how to put this on a GIS platform, how to bring some more. So the point is, the goal is the same. Your starting points need not necessarily be the same. You could start from a different standpoint, establish a use case, and I think when you start realizing value out of the use case, I think the other elements will naturally sort of fit in and you'll get that entire puzzle. I guess, so everybody need not start at the same point. It's kind of my point there.
No, absolutely.
That adoption that you're talking about. So.
Absolutely, and I think there is a lot to learn in this context if you draw parallel with the other, industry, because BIM is one of the enablers for Lean, and Lean is actually based on manufacturing principles as well, wherein you don't have to go in a sequential manner. You start with the value generating process first and lead to a cohesive planning. With that, I think, I would invite views from Rohini also. Rohini, if you can throw some light on the fact that, how, what and how we can learn from the manufacturing industry, especially when it comes to the potential for prefab, which is now emerging over many years now. It is also changing the way we are looking into the design industry, because the engineers and the design industry is also rethinking their strategies to go for prefab as much as possible, offsite construction, and then based on that they are designing their projects. but still there is a lot to learn. And what is it that we can still learn from the manufacturing industry, especially for the approaches when it comes for the DFMA, we call it design for manufacturing and assembly, through BIM, and what else we can do more? So Rohini.
Thanks, Yash. So absolutely, manufacturing industry has this figured out very well, and the sort of benefits that they have reaped because of the standardized processes, standardized designs, that they've been able to sort of create like a kit of parts, like a Lego blocks, and then bring it together based on the design that is needed. So that is something that they have sort of set an example for the rest of the other domains to look at and follow. Similarly, our construction industry is also, design and construction industry is also following the suit now, in a way where these kit of parts are being designed, as well as the asset owners and the clients themselves are posing the challenge to the design consultants as well as the engineering teams, that why not you follow the same setup that the manufacturing industry does, where you create a kit of parts and bring those together to solve issues, or to basically construct let's say large-scale infrastructure projects in place. So these could be bridges, these could be railway, facilities, these could be highways, and more. It's of course extended to buildings as well, where this kit of parts and Lego block kind of a methodology works very well, and it also sort of, especially owing to this environment that we are in today, which is the COVID environment, where you can't have many people on the site. So you have few of the trained staff, you have these processes set up where you design things virtually, you do a value for money kind of an exercise through 3D, 4D, 5D, in collaboration with the contractors on board, the construction team, crew on board, and sort of formulate the methodology statements where you sort of bring all of these together using the data as the backbone throughout this activity, where you will know how the components are being done in virtual designs, as well as how they are being replicated in the offsite manufacturing factories, where they are all being done in a safe environment, in a quality controlled environment, as well as where you will also get a good sort of engineering control, where you can figure out what would be the best way to engineer certain design assemblies, which can not just help this project, but for other projects as well, where you will reuse potentially those design components, so that you will not just bring benefits to this project or this client. At a construction level, you will also have a certainty as to what outcome you may expect out of installing these, how many days it may take, as well as in terms of transportation, as well as tracking and operations and maintenance. These kind of as-built data becomes like the most important sort of feeding in information, so that then the asset sort of maintenance process and incorporation of these into asset maintenance systems also gets consistently delivered. So this is basically, if I have to give you an example of one of the rail projects, large infrastructure rail projects, is where this kind of DFM solutions was implemented, where we created about quite a number of shell abutments for a bridge, for a railway bridge, and for a road bridge for that railway project, where shell abutments, including L walls, they had quite a number of decks. So the same methodology, the same modules that were created in the offsite factories were developed for the other projects as well. So there's another large-scale, huge rail project going on, which wherein there for a 65-meter bridge. So typically it would take about 12 weeks for the construction to happen, with including the issues, as well as some problems with the people who are using that main road or the highway where the bridge would have to be installed. So all of this was done in about 5 days' time with this DFMA approach, where about 448 wheel transporter was brought in. In about 45 minutes, they sort of set up the entire 150 meters span bridge brilliantly. And this is the kind of sort of benefits that it brings in, that only a few of the crew members who are specially trained can install this. And this way, this brings benefits back to the contractor as well as to the client, that they'll be able to establish these assets over a short period of time in many places, especially in large-scale projects.
So thank you, Rohini. I think great insights, and I'm glad that the target value engineering, because my colleague also agree. The concept of target value design is very much possible through technologies like BIM, where as you design, you can actually see the associated impact on your BOQ and the cost of the project. The decisions can be taken upfront much faster. If you have the budget constraint, you can look at the new design ideas from an optimization standpoint. So a lot can be done. With that, let me also have Tushar to share his views on increasing the prefab penetration using BIM. How can that be made possible? So Tushar, if you can share some views on this, please.
Okay, so I come from a manufacturing background. Okay, so we have a terminology called as MPS, Master Production Schedule, where we have the man, the machine, and the material together. Okay, so we plan everything, and the assembly works that way. Of course, those are discrete assembly techniques. Now, when we try to apply similar things for an apartment complex, okay, we have done prefab a lot, okay, in the past. Sometimes when the space is available, we do that, and it's a fantastic thing. We have made a 25-story apartment in just 8 months, okay, and those are all rehab apartments, and we made tens of them, okay. So it is definitely a good thing to do, okay. Now coming to the BIM part of it, the problem is that time equal to cost. This nobody understands, okay. People, while scheduling the schedule, okay, they don't do quantity-based time, okay. We have to see the quantity and then define the time. So we need tools which can integrate with the BIM model, okay. So I work on Vico, okay. I work with our architect called Chirag Dedia, who helps me on Vico, okay. And I do the reverse planning, okay. I look at the quantity and do the plan in Vico, okay. And the cost, of course, comes there. And I have a BIM model in Revit, all work together. So so basically it's a good combination. So those things have to happen, and the changes also have to happen in the BIM model. As the construction is happening, it has to happen. So prefab is a way ahead. We have seen the worldwide, it is the way ahead. Due to some logistics problems or some space problem in India, we are not able to do that much. But in the future, that's going to be way ahead.
Sure, thank you, Tushar. I think I'm just moving along with the other topics also that we want to cover now. Dr. Amarnath, I think you mentioned about the open and integrated BIM. That's something that that's a way forward for in the industry for increasing the penetration also as one of the enablers. Any further thought that you can share with us, that how do we actually achieve this level of open and integrated BIM on a widespread scale? Is this something which has already been done in global markets? Do OEMs have a bigger role to play to make this happen? Because clearly this is not a one-size-fit-all approach, and we need to see how to go for it. So any insights, Dr. Amarnath, from your side on this, please?
Yeah. So we all speak about BIM maturity, right? Like level 0, no BIM, level 1, BIM for design, level 2 for design and construction, level 3 for a complete life cycle. Today, we are in a stage to discuss about the complete life cycle and an ecosystem. And we are speaking about a connectivity between a human and a equipment and a software and the data, right? So it becomes a challenging because everyone are not aligned with the same operating systems to the technologies. And when it comes to the life cycle, if we are exchanging the information, because the day one, when the planning team has done something, the design team needs it, and the design team, what they have done, the analysis team needs it, and then the construction team needs it, planning team, the quality team comes in, safety, procurement, logistic, and then comes into the handover, then operations and demolition, recycle. So you are using multiple technologies in the life cycle. If I say at least 15 to 20 technologies comes in, if you want to drive complete BIM in the project, then only you can realize the what so-called ROI. And when we are saying like that, so integration is something which is required. Level 3, when we say, which is still not there, which is mainly speaking about integrated BIM. So what we say integrated BIM is having everyone aligned, everyone able, matured in a particular project to deliver BIM. And any technologies available which are very much open and able to collaborate between the data which is moving from one technology to another technology, and proper strategies in place for the way forward, understanding the investments and return on investments and taking ahead. Now, this is the key requirement if we are looking for the level 3 BIM maturity. And I think that's the way the journey is moving, because before, when you see, people used to have only softwares installed on their systems. And now the industries are moving, having their BIM applications onto the cloud base. And now some of the technology vendors have moved at least 40 to 50% of their technologies into the cloud-based solutions. And when we're saying about integrated BIM, that is very much important, because we are not only limiting our connects through systems, or it may be through laptop, through iPads, or it's a mobile gadgets. So the model is a little bit heavy files, So when you're trying to access through these things, obviously it should be through a common data environment. Again, coming into the integrated BIM, cloud-based common data environment, the main challenge here is all the technology vendors currently in the Indian market, none of them have the data center set up in India. The data will go to the common data environment where the cloud is set up in some other country. So there comes a challenge of the data, what you are putting in, what is the security systems for that. So this kind of challenges are still there, even though we speak about common data environment. So there is a need for having a common data environment, having the data security, and having the good connectivity among the people and integration among the people and the data and the technologies. So this will really help for having a better project management with BIM. That's what the current challenges are. And there is no one place said that a complete solution for BIM is available from so-and-so OEM or service provider. This again becomes a challenge for SMEs or even big scale companies to look for a complete BIM implementation. Some steps can be taken on these lines to support the transformation.
So thank you, Dr. Amarnath. And I think I'll just bring in Kalyan also, because this is a related topic. I think from someone like Bentley also, that how do we make this happen? From a technology perspective, is because in today's context, if someone has to actually really work on BIM, even with a particular technology, you need to have a heavy machinery. The hardware, the software capabilities have to be at a different level altogether. So how do we make it, a low code, light touch, application based platform, because that will really solve a lot of problems. So Kalyan, any views on that from you?
So I think yeah. So I think the answer there is, I think we should accept some of the foundational characteristics of the industry. Like I said, the fragmentation of the industry and the fragmentation of the technologies first needs to be accepted. And therefore, what you should even be looking for when you look for technology is technology that is like a platform play, or something that actually comes pre-packaged with abilities to do API-based integration and things like that. In fact, if you look at Bentley's iTwins platform, it is an open source platform. So the idea is to enable everybody to sort of write and interoperate with it. So it's kind of built with the principle that there is fragmentation of stakeholders and technology. And what you really need is a information bus, if you're going to think about it that way, that connects all these things. Doesn't matter who it is. Only if you think technology in that sense, and when you start procuring technology with those expectations, you can even sort of walk the journey towards saying that I want to have, I want to move towards what I call as integrated project controls, right? So I think the expectations setup needs to be different, and that should be expected from the technology vendors like us, right? So the OEM vendors you should ask those hard questions, saying, I again I have discussions that I have wherein there are ERP systems that are closed. I mean, you cannot connect to them. What do you do, right? So you've kind of locked in. You've locked your data, you've locked the thing, and it's a little bit of a frustrating exercise. And ERP is like a much stronger foundation that you want to have, where you really need to be able to do this. So when you choose your technology, and today, like you said, a lot of the technology vendors are moving towards clouds, microservices, API based. It's not a very uncommon expectation from your, it is just that we need advice from transformation agents. And I guess you mentioned Lean, and KPMG does a lot of this as well, wherein you educate the owners and say, don't think short term, don't think cost, think long term, think value. And I think that alone will lead. I mean, there are several standards. Like IFC was a standard that was created in the past. COBE is a standard that's been created. So I think the desire and need and the is always there. The push and the drive will come only when the end users adopt.
No, thank you, Kalyan, for sharing your views. I'm just wait. Yeah. Yes, please.
Sorry. I want to
please
answer this question. Yeah, I want to answer this. See,
we have only 5 minutes left to share, so please.
Okay, fine. Around 8-9 years back, we used to design ships, okay, Navy ships. So we are hull designing software. Okay, we used to use CATIA, and then we should export data and take it to PipeNet or 2D software for doing piping. Okay, it's because there's a correlationship, right? The pressure conditions and all that. Now, what happens is people expect it to be an end-to-end solution. There are no end-to-end solutions in the world. Okay, you do some development in Autodesk, you go to Trimble for some collaboration, you go to Bentley for something else. So that's a way of life. Okay, you can't avoid it.
Sure. Thank you. I mean, I would love to have more chat on this offline. I was just telling Kalyan that I'm just waiting for a day when I am actually able to just download a BIM app, either from Bentley, from anyone, from the Google Play Store, start punching in the design in 512 megabyte MB RAM also, if that's possible. So having said that, I think we are at the last leg of the discussion, and I will just open it up for the last question for today, which I think what Kalyan had shown us in his keynote address, the Tony Stark video. When do we achieve that? I mean, while it's all good to see, touch and feel that sense, but do we, all of us, including myself, do we expect that to be a reality in our lifespan, or do we expect that for the generation which is under graduation to come alive? So what's the future trend? When do we see that becoming a reality? So since Kalyan, you had shown us the video, so I'll come to you last.
You're putting me on the spot.
So Sonali, if you can share your views, what's the future trend, and when do we, in how many years do we expect to reach that state? Actually, just 30-second or 40-second view from your side, please.
I'm not Nostradamus, but I can just say that it's going to happen in our lifetime. It may not be available for every person, but it's definitely going to happen in our lifetime.
Sure. Thank you. Rohini, your views on this?
Absolutely. So I would say, yes, in the next 10 years, by 2031, one of us would probably be the Tony Stark that we saw on screen, moving around and, tapping around the hologram and visualizing the data, because already the foundation that is needed for that to happen is in place. ISO 19650 information management, we got open BIM softwares, the digital world is sort of, revolving and pivoting towards that direction. So I'm optimistic about it. 2031 to 2035 would be that golden era of everybody being Tony Stark.
Sure. So I think if we can coincide this with the $5 trillion economy plan of our government also, that will be a big achievement for us, all of us. Yes. So Dr. Amarnath, your views, please.
Well, we cannot wait and see when it's going to happen. We have to step in and take the ecosystem further to drive that, and then only it's going to happen. Most of the time, we just wait and watch when it's going to happen. But we have to be part of the journey to make it happen. So this is my view.
Okay. Tushar, your views?
So I'm in a hurry. I think I'll take 5 years.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And last but not least, Mr. Kalyan, your views, sir, on this. When will you make this happen for all of us? Actually,
We think we're ready. So just come talk to us, right? As long as you have those foundations of data and SOP standards, we're there for you.
Sure. I think. Thank you. With that, I think we've covered a lot of topics in this compressed 45-minute session. I think everyone has shared diverse views, but one thing is common across all the discussions, in this panel also, that BIM is an enabler and it's a value driver. It is not, while it is seen as a cost, but in the long run, there is ROI linked to that, and that's the mind shift that has to happen at the top management. First of all, whether you talk about the private organization or the public sector, and also we need to start raising the level of awareness of BIM through various forums like this, so that it reaches the common man and it becomes business as usual when it comes to the project delivery of any size and scale. So with that, I would like to thank all the panelists again. I think we are right on time, and I'll hand it over to Shreyal to conclude.
Yes, Mr. Singh, thank you so much, and thank you all the panelists. But we have questions that have come in, from the viewers. With your permission, I know we are short on time, but if I could just take up 1 or 2 questions that we've got from the viewers. So
Sure.
One question that we have is that in countries like Singapore, if a building above 2,000 square meter height has to be built, no approval is given if the plan is not submitted in BIM. So should the government in India make BIM adoption mandatory for certain projects? And if so, for what type of projects can this be done?
I think I'll invite Sonali to your views on this, and then I think Rohini right after that. So Sonali, what's your view?
So I think we definitely need to mandate it. Cannot be at the size that Singapore has. We probably need to start big, maybe start with the infrastructure. And like I said earlier, it has to be not just for getting a building permit, but it has to be from an asset perspective. How do you want to maintain that? And that way we can start mandating. And like Tushar also mentioned, that in Mumbai, we are going to have a BIM DCR. So we are already on that journey, I think.
Okay. Rohini?
Yeah, so I believe that it will have to be applied both at a building scale as well as a large scale, because building scale would be a quick win for the government to show implementation as well as the results. But perhaps they will see more benefits, streaming from the large infrastructure projects. Could be water, could be nuclear. If we were to go on to that journey, definitely maritime defense, including, of course, our roads and highways, including the transportation sector, airports, roads, rail. So I would say, mandate it across, but we will see the quick wins with the building sectors, definitely, followed by the rest of the domains.
Sure. Thank you. Shreya, can we move
we
to
have
the
a
next
question specifically for this one is for Mr. Tushar Vagal. The viewer is from the cement industry and into project management since the last 15 years. His question is that, can you please guide at what level can we ask our management to consider BIM for projects? What he's talking about is, it's a lengthy one, I'm just going to read it out fast. I have never seen people using BIM in any of the project management processes. Cement industry projects has improved a lot in the past. There was a time when it took 3 years to complete a project, and now the similar project is getting completed in 1.5 years. But can you please guide us at what level we should ask our management to consider BIM for these projects?
So, what level, if he means the LOD, okay, the level of detailing, okay, then he has to use multiple tools. So normally we work at LOD 350, okay, of detailing. If you want to do also reinforcement, it's LOD 400. Okay, beyond 400 it becomes quite difficult. But the problem is that, see, most of the work is outsourced. So you may yourself make a BIM model, okay, but the detailing has to be done by the vendor. There comes the challenge part of integrating what the vendor has done and then what you have done. So merging both the things is a bit difficult part. Nobody wants to take that pain of doing that. But then there are tools available where you can scan the whole building, okay, and maybe a 1 rupee a square feet and get the as-built drawing, okay. So those tools are there. You can do that and work backwards. So that's about level.
Right. And I'll take the last question here for Mr. Vaidyanathan. Interested to learn how we can implement 4D and 5D first before 3D. Please help.
I think what I was really trying to say is, if you have a schedule which you're looking to manage the project, that is your 4D. And if you have your BOQ quantities, depending on whether you're an owner or a contractor in an ERP system, we have tools which just allows you to bring the two together and interconnect them in a many manners. Get your field guys to update them using a mobile app, and you can start generating your earned value metrics, your MIS reports, whether it is DPR and all that stuff. And quickly you will see that all of your information is starting to fall in place, and then you stitch the model in afterwards. So I'm saying, just use your current scheduling system, whether it's MSP or Primavera, pull it into a project control solution, take your BOQs, which is your budgets, from an ERP system, pull it into your project control solution. We have mechanisms to connect the two, have field updates, and then you're on your journey.
Thank you so much. And we have some more questions, but I will stop at this. Much has been discussed in detail in this discussion. Once again, thank you, Mr. Singh, and all the panelists for joining and sharing information with us through this interesting and engaging session.